Good afternoon. It's September 29th, early afternoon, and this is the culmination of something I've been working on pretty much all month. Actually, perhaps even longer than that, for the last 5 weeks. And I'm presenting it to you now because I promised myself I would finish it before the end of the month, and time is running out. So here it is. The subject is fascinating to me. It always has been, probably always will be. And it's the dual nature of change. The only thing we can be certain of is uncertainty. I used to go ahead and start my seminars by saying that there were only two organisms on the planet that appreciate change, that accept it, actually welcome it, embrace it. And one is a stockbroker, and the other is a wet infant. The rest of us have no use for change, which is unfortunate because it's one of the few constants that we can be sure of. The only other thing we can be sure of is that the ground that we're willing to plant our flag on is going to be shaky, regardless. It's going to be unstable, and that the future will bring with it a fairly large component of the unknown. We try really hard to avoid change, and we try really hard, and perhaps even harder, not to think about it. I'm not in that category. I don't include myself in that category. I think about change all the time. I think about the nature of change. I think about change in two different regards, though. I think about change in terms of the kind of change that's thrust upon you, and the kind of change you seek. And that's what I hope this piece is all about. And now the kind of change that's thrust upon you is the change that we're most familiar with, the change that we are forced to deal with constantly in the course of a lifetime. It's the change of economic uncertainty. It's the change of natural disaster, and perhaps the change of political turmoil. We certainly learned a great deal about change, and that particular kind of change, over the past 18 months in the pandemic, and what that has wrought upon all of us. I can speak to, that's a theoretical, that's talking about change philosophically, but realistically, change is very personal. Even those kinds of changes, but even more so, changes that occur in our lives that are difficult. In some instances, even disastrous. They're the change that accompanies illness or injury. Change that occurs after you fall down and break your elbow, and spend the next 3 or 4 months trying to recover, flexibility and resilience in the use of that arm. Or you're diagnosed with a chronic, incurable terminal illness, and then experience a reprieve, granted a pardon, and wind up going through a stem cell bone marrow transplant, as I did. But many people aren't that fortunate. There are a lot of people that go through illness and have to face the consequence every day. And that's something that takes resilience, takes strength, courage, discipline, determination. All the D words I'm so fond of talking about all the time. That kind of change is something that most of us are familiar with, all of us are familiar with, but entrepreneurs, small business owners particularly, deal with changes like that probably on a daily basis. It's even more difficult in that kind of an environment because of the impact it has not only on you, but on the people that have joined you on your odyssey towards success. The other kind of change that you can look at and should look at very carefully is the kind of change that you seek, the kind of change that you covet, the kind of change that you long for, change that will offer you more or better, an easier, more fulfilling life, success, however you want to define that. A change towards fitness, perhaps, or change towards mindfulness, change to a different lifestyle. That's the kind of change that probably originates from someplace deep inside you, from a place that yearns for more or better. But either way, we should be aware of the fact that change is very much like an earthquake, in the respect that it will occur and dramatically change the lifestyle, your awareness of where you are and what you're doing. It'll quickly change that familiar landscape into something of the unknown, leaving uncertainty and in many cases chaos if you're not prepared, if you haven't thought about this much, or if it's something that you're not aware of in its wake. And I think in some instances it's impossible to anticipate, more difficult to accept. It's just there at your doorstep, and you have to deal with it regardless. Whether it's something that happens incontrovertibly beyond your control, or whether it's something that you invite into your life. The change that comes from within, this wish for a better life, for a more fulfilling future, has problems associated with it also because that desire in and of itself is not enough. It'll take a lot more than that to get you where you want to go, to take you from where you are to where you want to be, to go where you've never gone before. Because in order to do that, you've got to do what you've never done before. And that's all very, very uncomfortable. And at the very least uncomfortable. It's, in most cases, paralyzing for a lot of people. And I think it's important to recognize that, not only when it's change that we want to initiate ourselves, or whether it's change that's being initiated by someone close to us that we are witnessing or drawn into inadvertently. It's important to be able to empathize. But either way, it's going to be difficult. And one of the reasons it's going to be difficult is because when this change occurs, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to be successful or you're going to fail. And over time and over a lifetime in business and studying people and watching people, I've discovered that the pain and suffering, the anxiety associated with the fear of success is far greater than the fear of failure. We seem to understand subconsciously, we seem to understand on a very primitive level that if we attempt something new and we're not successful, we can always go back to where we were. You know, most of us are very careful to ensure that we don't burn all the bridges completely. That, you know, no matter how rickety and unstable that bridge back to where we were was, we can generally get there. So if we fail, nothing's really going to change if we go back to where we were. Now, on the other hand, if we're successful, if we go ahead and get to where we want to be, this unknown, this new and uncharted territory, we can be pretty certain that everything around us is going to change. And we're going to be pretty certain that not everybody is going to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. Not everybody's going to want to make the journey with us. And we have no idea who's going to be waiting for us on the other side when we get there. And in most cases, we all have this innate fear that that bridge we were just talking about a minute ago is going to burn to the ground. And there is no way back to where you were. So the fear of success is something that we all have to really contend with if we're going to go ahead and take this subject, this concept, this construct of change seriously, and we're going to invite it into our lives and attempt to do something different, to be something different, and to accomplish something different. There are lots of books that have been written on this, volumes, libraries filled with them. But I think that what I've put together here is a little bit different. I think it's just something to tickle your intellect slightly, to get you thinking about it so that you're aware of it. It's kind of a gentle wake-up call to say these things are going to happen. You should be prepared. You know, you should awaken yourself to the reality that if you live in Southern California, the ground is going to move one day under your feet. If you live in the Midwest, there could be a tornado or 2 or 10. If you live down in the South, East, not unlikely that you'll have to deal with a hurricane every once in a while. If you are in business, you can be relatively certain there's going to be an economic downturn or 2 in the course of your career. And if you live on the planet, it's not unlikely that some of us will become ill. And we should understand that these are the realities we all must face at one time or another, and we should be prepared for them. And that's especially true when the change we seek is change that we invite into our own lives. I didn't have any choice when it came to the primary myelofibrosis that I was forced to deal with. I did have a choice when it came to whether or not to accept treatment in the form of a stem cell bone marrow transplant. But once embarked upon that journey, once I had made that choice, I had no choice but to accept whatever transpired subsequently. And those are the kinds of things that we need to think about. We need to be strong enough to transcend. So when you're thinking about change, think about it differently. Think about its duality. Think about it in terms of the change you invite and the change you seek. The change that happens without your permission, that just appears on your doorstep and dares you to challenge it. There is one more thing I'd like to include before finishing up here, and that is the fact that either way, whether by choice or by chance, you're confronted with change. It's not a journey that you have to make alone. As a matter of fact, it's probably important to ensure that you're accompanied along the way, by counselors, by confidants, by someone close to you, someone you trust, someone to encourage you when things aren't going well, somebody to talk you off the ledge when things aren't going well. The quality of that individual, their willingness and ability to listen and to help you learn is critical, and it's most important. So don't overlook it. Don't take it for granted. And be sure that in this discussion of change, you have created a community around you that is dedicated to your success as well as their own. Think about all of that and let me know what you think. I'd be very, very interested in what your experiences are. You know where to find me if you need me. In the meantime, stay well, take care, and be mindful. Mindful of where you are, mindful of where you'd like to be, mindful of where you've been. That's it for now.